No less than 1/3 of the UN's World Heritage Sites are in the Muslim world. By the 1970s, a yearning to be modern and a chronic lack of resources had combined to imperil Islam's inheritance. As he travelled the Muslim world, His Highness the Aga Khan became more and more concerned that this great cultural legacy was crumbling to dust. With formidable energy and determination, His Highness set out to reverse this trend. From its foundation, the Aga Khan Trust for Culture was designed to use cultural assets as catalysts for positive change. It wasn't mere restoration. It was about revitalizing communities, building their confidence, reinforcing identity, and restoring hope. Old skills are being relearned, ancient villages and historic cities restored, new discoveries made, economically depressed communities revived, music and verse almost forgotten, now on stage again. Muslim heritage preserved for future generations. Stay with us as we travel from the deserts of West Africa to the foothills of the Himalayas to bring you a remarkable story of Muslim revival. Al-Azhar Park, Cairo, a green lung for one of the world's most densely populated cities. The park is more than just a place of rest and relaxation. Creating it from a rubble dump has spurred a commitment to restoring the treasures of Islamic Cairo in the core of the fabled Fatimid city, while revitalizing a run-down neighborhood. The driving force behind this work is himself a descendant of the Fatimids, His Highness the Aga Khan. Renowned for their tolerance, the Fatimids reigned over an extraordinary flowering of the arts and sciences. Philosophers, physicians, mathematicians and architects flourished under the patronage of Ismaili imams. But the legacy of this golden age had fallen into decay. When His Highness the Aga Khan visited Cairo in the mid-1970s, he was distressed to see the work of his ancestors suffering from what appeared to be a terminal decline. And it wasn't just Fatimid Cairo. Throughout the Muslim world, landmarks of cultural identity were giving way to poor imitations of Western styles.
At the time, what worried me was, first of all, the lack of cultural continuity. We carried out a number of surveys. One of them was particularly articulate in what we found, which was that there wasn't one single educator in any school of architecture in the Islamic world who had been educated in the Islamic world. Not one.
Other sites were suffering from severe neglect, with historic buildings often seen as a drain on resources. Culture itself was considered a luxury, separate from and secondary to social and economic development. Meanwhile, traditional art and music were being eroded by the forces of globalization. The challenge was to find ways for culture not only to pay its own way, but to become a catalyst for development. In Cairo, this meant coupling the creation of Al-Azhar Park to the development of an entire district, Darb al-Ahmar. This historic neighbourhood had been in freefall. Garbage was piled shoulder high in the streets. Drug dealers prowled its ruins. Migrant families were crowded together in decrepit housing, and landmark buildings were going to ruin.
It was one of the poorest areas of Cairo, an area where social development had no horizons whatsoever. Therefore, you had more and more people coming in because these historic cities are transit areas for very often for newly urbanized populations, so you get more and more degradation.
Hundreds of people from Darb al-Ahmar were employed in creating the park. The site posed several technical challenges. It had been a rubble dump for over 500 years. The accumulated debris required excavation, grading and replacement. To counter high levels of salinity in the soil, sweet sand and corrective chemicals had to be added. Over 80,000 truckloads of The park excavations revealed an extraordinary 1.3 kilometre stretch of the 12th century Ayyubid city wall. A huge archaeological conservation task followed, resulting in numerous discoveries that illuminated the history of Islamic Cairo.
Rehabilitating these environments, you create an indigenous economic process. It's not driven by tourism, it's simply driven by improvements in quality of life. People actually trade, they do their own thing in a sense. You find new enterprises coming up. If you can add in microcredit, then you add in economic support to that process. It's true that tourism is one of the factors, but I think our experience up to now is that it's more important to create that economic dynamic of that community. You can now measure changes in disposable incomes, in access to education, in longevity, in healthcare, so all this is measurable.
Restoration without a plan for the future can be a poisoned chalice. So the long-term sustainability of the project was a priority from the outset.
This very important investment in financial terms that are made through the Aga Khan Trust for Culture will make little sense if they were lost by what I will call the lack of sustainability. So from the very beginning, when the Trust for Culture decides to enter into a project, is in looking at the real possibilities to make it financially viable. The experience of Cairo Park, which has now been open to the public for 2.5 years, is that the sustainability has been achieved. Apart from creating 1,000 new jobs, the park has generated already a surplus of income over expenditure. That is what is financing this development, and we hope will be financing the development of these services of interest to the community for a long-term future. The conservation and restoration work has been also an occasion to provide training to more than 300 young Egyptians. Most of them are now working on their own and earning their living in the very active market of conservation in Egypt.
Some 14 registered monuments, 6 public buildings and 82 houses have been restored so far. adding new lustre to old Islamic Cairo.
We're done with the injection, we're done with the plastering consolidation, and now we are doing like a reinsertion of wooden beams in order to reconstruct the upper part.
Al-Azhar Park is a flagship project of the Aga Khan Historic Cities Support Programme. To date, the programme has been involved in some 20 other revitalisation schemes. And in New Delhi, the gardens of Humayun's tomb. The son of Babur, Humayun was the second Mughal emperor. Forthcoming area development projects include the Nizamuddin district, not far from Humayun's tomb, and the walled city of Lahore in Pakistan.
We find many civilizations here on this rock from the mid-2nd millennium BC until Ottoman period. So we have Hittite temple in the center of the old citadel, and also we have many places from Byzantine period, and after that from Islamic period, from Ayyubid, Mamluki and Ottoman period. It's like a layers, you know, like a cake's layers from many, many civilizations.
The Aga Khan Historic Cities programme has concentrated on the Ayyubid Palace, repairing its structure as well as reviving its outward appearance. It's also worked to make the citadel more attractive to tourists, building amenities such as a viewing platform overlooking the old city. A few kilometres to the southwest of Aleppo is the castle of Salah ad-Din. The site was first used in the 1st century BC. In the early decades of the 12th century, it was occupied by the Crusaders. And in 1188, it was conquered by Salah ad-Din. That the castle fell at all is testament to Salah ad-Din's military genius, for the Crusaders had built awesome defences. Chief among these is a ditch running 156 metres along the east side of the castle. 20 metres wide and 28 metres deep, the ditch was hewn from the rock, with a tapering column left behind to support a bridge to the castle entrance. Arab additions to the castle include a mosque and a palace with bathhouses and courtyards. Here, as at Aleppo, the Aga Khan Historic Cities programme has worked to restore the ancient masonry and to improve people's access to this remarkable archaeological treasure. Another site to have benefited is Masyaf Citadel. The citadel has its origins in the Byzantine period, but Masyaf's most significant building work was undertaken by the 12th century Ismaili leader Sinan. Since 2000, the Historic Cities programme has implemented a range of measures to reverse Masyaf's decline. The work turned up a few surprises, such as a secret entrance to an underground Byzantine tomb previously hidden by layers of compacted rubble. But the Historic Cities programme is about more than conserving the past. It's also designed to improve the present. So at Masyaf, the restoration work has been coupled to the development of a market for local communities. And at Aleppo, infrastructure improvements have been carried out well beyond the citadel's walls. The stimulus provided by all the projects, from training, restoration and related activities, has helped revitalise communities as effectively as any economic development scheme.
We're looking at how to develop economic results in restoration of historic buildings. So what we're doing is we're trying to bring out new knowledge or create new knowledge, which then can be used by communities to change and to change positively. What I'm hoping to achieve is the notion that these historic sites are potential economic and social dynamos. They are not frozen, paralyzed historic assets. They are assets that can actually contribute to the quality of life of the people who live in those contexts.
We consider culture as a capital. I mean, for us, conservation is a means towards achieving certain goals. One is, of course, we would very much like to conserve and restore and reuse these monuments, historic monuments. But more than that, we would also like to revive the traditional construction techniques and bring back this whole traditional knowledge. And then we would also like to promote local materials so that local people could get maximum benefit.
In Pakistan's northern areas, the Historic Cities programme has focused on 3 ancient forts, Baltit, Altit and Shigar. Built in the 14th century, Baltit Fort was restored in 1996. It's now a museum and cultural centre. Lower down in the valley is Altit Fort. Altit Fort is currently being restored, a long and painstaking process that provides training and employment for local people. These women have been trained in the restoration of the fort's highly decorated wooden columns. Prince Jamal Khan, a descendant of the fort's original owners, believes his ancestors would have approved.
They've helped us to regain our culture. The children over here, there's 100% literacy over here, but literacy is always not enough until you don't know your background, what culture you associate with. By donating these historic sites, I think we can preserve that culture again and revive all of this. With the donation of Baltit Fort, the most important thing that has come back to us is our identity of our people, and we're very fortunate to be having such institutions that are doing so much for our culture and our people. So.
Outside the Hunza Valley, Shigar Fort has been transformed into an elegant hotel, bringing tourist income to the region. The work of restoration is complemented by the efforts of other Aga Khan Development Network agencies aimed at improving the lives of local communities. Water and sanitation projects have reduced common diseases in Shigar. Microfinance has helped start businesses in town, Hundreds of other small infrastructure projects, ranging from irrigation canals to bridges, have further improved prospects and at the same time helped protect the region's fragile agricultural landscape. New buildings were taking up precious arable land, but with the addition of modern amenities such as sanitation to traditional housing, people have been able to return to their ancestral homes and the pressure on this unique environment has been eased.
I'm a deep believer in the fact that if the environment is good, people live a better quality of life. They're more stable. Their children grow up in a better environment. Their horizons are more stable. It's not a one-generation exercise.
Working in war-torn Afghanistan presented new challenges for the programme.
Kabul, what we have is a different situation. We have an extraordinary historical site, and we have something of the order of 60,000 people living around that site who have no economic rights. They live in buildings they don't own, on land that they don't own, in an environment where the city has no obligation to provide infrastructure.
As in Cairo, the Trust's work in Kabul is designed to improve people's well-being through the restoration of an ancient garden, the Bagh-e-Babur. This haven of peace in a troubled city, once a favoured spot of the first Mughal emperor Babur, is part of a much larger project that includes the mausoleum of Timur Shah, the second king of the Durrani Empire, and the Ashokan Wa Arafan historic district, where mosques, shrines and private houses are being restored. Other projects in Herat province have a similar purpose, to preserve the landmarks of cultural pride while providing an economic stimulus to the surrounding area. In the 15 years since its foundation, the Historic Cities Support Programme has earned a reputation as one of the world's foremost conservation organisations, with 5 UNESCO Heritage Awards to its name. The roots of the programme go back to the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, founded by His Highness in 1977. The award was given a broad mission to identify and promote building designs that improve people's well-being. It's now widely regarded as the world's most important architectural prize, in part because the selection process is so rigorous, taking up to 3 years.
It's such a prestigious award, and it's in every sense a very discriminating award. So I think it's enormously respected. It's not an easy award to win, and you can see that by looking at the track record of the programme.
The 9 winners of this year's award ranged from multi-million-dollar developments such as the University of Technology Petronas in Malaysia to community-friendly projects such as this handmade school building in Rudrapur, Bangladesh. The award also honours excellence in architectural conservation and restoration. What all the winning projects had in common was a concern that the built environment should benefit people.
Unless people who are living in this heritage site receive direct and important benefits for living in it today, in 2007, not in 200 years ago, then these people will not be very comfortable preserving the site, because the site has to meet their contemporary needs.
The diversity of the winning projects mirrors the diversity of the Islamic world as a whole.
In a way, I've never been on an architectural jury where you're looking at handmade buildings to skyscrapers and everything in between.
It's a reward for work well done. It's encouragement to continue doing what they do. It's an example of what we think others should be doing.
Held at the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, this year's prize ceremony was a fitting celebration of the award's 30th anniversary. The Award for Architecture and the Historic Cities Support Programme are central pillars of the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. In support of these programmes, the Trust also provides learning resources via the website archnet.org and collaborates with an endowed Centre for Muslim Architecture at Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Historic buildings are concrete evidence of the existence of other cultures and of the connections between them. As such, they're an important resource in an age when some would seek to drive a wedge between Islam and the West.
There's been this famous statement of conflict of civilizations, and I don't share that view. To me, it's a conflict of ignorance. In fact, the history of the Muslim Ummah is significantly absent from general knowledge in the industrialized world. That, to me, is one of the major contributors to the difficulties we are facing today.
To help remedy this situation, museum exhibitions have recently been held in Italy, France and the United Kingdom, helping to open the eyes of the West to the cultural diversity of the Islamic world. Permanent museums are also planned.
One of them is going to be the Aga Khan Museum in the city of Toronto, which will be housed in a contemporary building by the Japanese architect Fumiko Maki. This institution's principal mission will be to diffuse the knowledge of Muslim art and Islamic culture in general in North America. Also, this museum establishment contemplates the creation of a museum of historic Cairo. This museum will be also the point of guidance and departure for visitors, both national and international, that may wish to know better the Islamic city and that may choose to visit the various spaces within the Ayyubid walls, which are going to be presenting museum exhibits.
In the meantime, the museum programme is supporting a conservation laboratory in Cairo that is training young Egyptians in the techniques of restoration and preservation. Now in its final stages of preparation, the Indian Ocean Maritime Museum in Zanzibar will provide a view on the Indian, Arab, African and European cultures that left their mark on the island. Museums are not just repositories of culture. Like landmark buildings, they speak of other histories and other influences beyond the ones we might have learned or perceived. They illustrate the pluralistic reality of the world's interconnected cultures. This idea of cultural and social pluralism lies at the heart of His Highness's own philosophy.
I think the pluralism of societies is an absolutely critical issue. And if pluralism is not valued, as I think it has to be, we will continue to find situations in the developing world which are going to be very, very bitter indeed, and I'm very worried about that, frankly. Most of the conflicts we've seen in recent decades all have had a component of conflict amongst either religions or tribes or ethnic backgrounds or linguistic backgrounds. People who don't value the fact that they live in pluralist societies. And I don't think people are born into valuing pluralism. I think you educate about pluralism.
The Aga Khan Music Initiative is another AKTC programme that works to create better cross-cultural understanding by preserving and promoting the rich musical traditions of Central Asia. The initiative supports music making at school level. Some 3,000 students have benefited so far. It's also documented local traditions and established workshops for building musical instruments. Meanwhile, international tours and CD recordings have taken the music to new audiences, revealing an unknown part of the world through its culture. The touring programme has also raised the status of the music in its own home territory, restoring pride in traditions that had been overwhelmed by Western culture. The many different activities of the Trust for Culture are all informed by Islam's humanistic tradition of service, charity and knowledge building. 30 years since creating the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, His Highness can look back on a legacy that has benefited both cultural heritage and the people who live among it in equal measure.
It's part of the ethic of Islam. It's not philanthropy. It's that you have a duty to share what you do not need yourself. If Allah has given you the wherewithal to share, you share. And you don't share on the basis of handouts. The best of giving is what enables people to become independent. That is, you don't give philanthropy on an ongoing basis. If you can give philanthropy, it's to make people capable